Welcome to the realm of science fiction, where imagination knows no bounds and extraordinary stories unfold. Enjoy the adventure. The supply hauler bucked slightly as it pierced the outer atmosphere of Vharran. Below, Ashra'tel sprawled like an open wound across the planet's ochre surface, jagged, chaotic, unnervingly quiet. The scars were obvious from orbit. Blackened. Barren temples half swallowed by prefab human command towers. Scorched earth stitched together by steel roads that gleamed like surgical staples. Marek Solas watched from the viewport, arms crossed tight, breath shallow. He'd seen war zones before, broken worlds stitched together with treaties and lies, but this was different. Ashra'tel didn't pretend. It didn't hide the burn marks or polish the rubble. The city hadn't healed. It had calcified, a pulsing. Perimeter grid flickered blue across the horizon. 1 part security, 2 parts message. We're still watching, we're still afraid. Even from here, the city whispered. Marek wasn't here for war. Not this time. But something deep in his bones told him the war hadn't ended. It had only been waiting. Ashra'tel buzzed like a hive-wired wrong. Too much light, too little warmth. Human steel scaffolds clung to the remnants of Vharran architecture like parasites pretending to be organs. Drone clusters flitted overhead, their optics sweeping every face twice. Propaganda screens looped footage of unity, a human shaking hands with a Vharran elder, smiling children of both species, images meant to soothe. But under the surface, nothing soothed. Peacekeepers stood on street corners with stun rifles and dead eyes. Every wall carried scorch marks beneath the fresh paint. Every silence echoed with things unsaid. This city wasn't living, it was enduring at Yao. The first security gate. The barrels came first. Marek stepped forward, hands raised slightly. Not in surrender, just habit. Her tri-lens scanner buzzed across his face, cataloguing every scar, every hesitation. The checkpoint officer barked orders without looking up. The peace here was fragile and enforced with muzzle flashes. A younger corporal leaned closer, his voice a notch too casual. First time in the fracture zone? Hope you're not squeamish. Marek didn't answer. He didn't need to. The air already smelled like blood, masked with ozone. This wasn't a welcome. It was a warning wrapped in protocol. Beyond the final checkpoint stood the outer gates of Ashra'tel, massive slabs of alloy and bone, carved with half-erased Vharran runes. And above them, strung between 2 towers, she hung, a woman, Vharran, suspended mid-air by stasis coils that pulsed in slow agony blue. Her body bore wounds both healed and fresh, lacerations that seemed ritualistic, surgical, intentional, skin like burnished stone cracked in too many places. Her head hung low, dark tendrils of hair drifting as if underwater. Beneath her in 5 languages the sign burned bright, never again. Marek's gut twisted. This wasn't justice, it was theater. Civilians passed beneath her without looking. Vendors sold ration chips and synth fruit with the same indifference as morning rain. To them she wasn't a person, just a banner strung from guilt and policy. But her eyes, barely open, flickering with a light too alive to ignore, watched everything. And they locked on him. The street moved around her, like she wasn't there. Children darted beneath her, suspended, body chasing drone toys. Vendors sold sizzling meat skewers just meters from her feet. No one looked up. No one flinched. Marek finally broke the silence. "Who is she?" he asked a nearby officer. The man barely glanced up from his data slab. "Kaer'shii, rebel commander, signed off on extermination protocols, let her hang." Then he went back to scrolling, just like that. Centuries of culture erased with a shrug. Marek stood still, 1,000 questions boiling under his skin. None of them seemed to matter here. The method was medieval, literally. Human history was full of such displays. Traitors hanged from castle gates, bodies left to rot as a message. But this wasn't Earth. And the woman above wasn't human. Somewhere along the timeline, someone dusted off the playbook of cruelty and rebranded it as tactical deterrence. Marek had read the protocols. Civic psychological messaging, they called it. It didn't feel like strategy. It felt like shame dipped in chrome. What chilled him most wasn't the display itself. It was the silence around it. This wasn't vengeance anymore. It had become ritual. Later, in the ops tent, Marek raised the issue carefully, formally. The Vharran female at the east gate. Are we sure this is sanctioned protocol? The room went quiet, then colder. The commander didn't look up from the schematics. You're here to patch wounds, not question doctrine. Another officer smirked. You want to treat her, stitch up a corpse for the cameras? Marek let it drop, at least out loud, but the image wouldn't leave him. The eyes that still moved, the breath that still fluttered. He wasn't just seeing a prisoner. He was seeing a patient, and he couldn't let it go. He didn't mean to walk that way, but somehow as night bled into ash-colored silence, Marek found himself beneath the eastern gate again. The street was nearly empty. The drones quieter now, just the hum of the stasis field steady and cruel. She hung in the same position, barely moved until her eyes opened. Dim, violet, unblinking. They locked onto his. No hate, no fury. Not even fear, just something worse. Hope. It pulsed from her in waves. Fragile, persistent, terrifying. The kind of hope that made guilt claw down his spine. She didn't plead, didn't speak. But he heard her anyway. The storm wasn't natural. Marek could tell by the way it pulsed. Too rhythmic, too timed. Orbital systems had triggered an atmospheric flush, likely to calm street tensions. But instead it made the city tremble. Violet lightning cracked above Ashra'tel's skyline, briefly illuminating the gate. She was still there. Rain began to fall, thick, oily, tasting faintly of metal. It hissed against the stasis coils, casting her in an eerie shimmer. The street was empty now. Only the storm bore witness. Marek stood in the shadows, jaw clenched. Somewhere behind his ribs, a part of him screamed to walk away. But the coils hummed. Her chest moved barely, another flash. Her eyes were open, still watching, still alive. His fingers shook as he keyed in the override. The port was hidden behind a false panel on the base of the stasis pylon, access reserved for emergency medevac protocols from the early occupation days. No one used it anymore, no one was meant to. The code, 5 digits, 2 pulses, a biometric scan clicked into place, a soft tone, then silence. The coils dimmed, the hum died, and the field collapsed with a hiss that sounded far too much like relief. She fell. Marek caught her before she hit the ground. She was heavier than expected. Lean muscle over alien bone, heat radiating like a fading sun. He stared down at her, soaked in acid rain, heartbeat thundering louder than the storm. He'd just committed treason, and he didn't care. He moved fast. Every step through the back alleys felt like a countdown to gunfire. Cameras blinked, but he knew their blind zones, where garbage piles or half-toppled walls blocked the line of sight. Kaer'shii didn't stir. Marek ducked into a maintenance hatch. Behind a refuse bay, boot heels clanging down rusted rungs into the undercity. Down here the air was thick with mold and static. Pipes hissed, rats scattered. Human and Vharran graffiti marked the walls, rage carved in half a dozen tongues. He adjusted her weight. Her arm slipped around his shoulder, not by will, just gravity. But it still made something twist inside. Him, down deeper, into the tunnels smugglers once used, past the places the city forgot. His boots splashed through standing water. Echoes followed, not voices, just guilt. The underground clinic was barely operational, half-lit, patched with scavenged gear and flickering med screens. Dust coated everything like dried ash. But the xenomed table still worked. Mostly. Marek laid her down with care he hadn't realized he had left in him. A reluctant nurse arrived, called in on Marek's emergency code, already muttering about court-martial. The table scanned her. Dim lights passed over her body, and her wounds lit up in soft pulses of blue. Plasma burns, microfractures, nerve disruption in 3 limbs. Torture, not battle damage. The nurse's breath hitched. Marek didn't need to ask why. The AI's voice crackled from the overhead speaker, calm and clinical. Subject DNA match, Kaer'shii Vharran royal lineage, Triarch heir. Deceased status, false. The nurse took a step back. That's not a prisoner. That's an act of war. Marek didn't move. He was staring at the readout, then at her face. Kaer'shii. They hadn't just left someone to suffer. They'd buried a truth under the gates. Her eyes snapped open with a soundless gasp, pupils flaring gold beneath. The violet, Marek instinctively stepped back. Her body twitched, fingers flexing, jaw tightening, chest rising in ragged starts, muscles coiled, ready to strike, even half-healed. The nurse reached for the sedative, but then her eyes found his and stopped. Something in her slowed. The tension didn't vanish but shifted. She was calculating, measuring, uncertain. Her gaze flicked to the wounds across her arms, the scanner lights, the unfamiliar ceiling, and back to him. Her voice came broken and raw, barely more than a whisper in her native tongue. Why? Not where am I? Not who are you? Not even what? Have you done just that one syllable? He didn't speak her language, not fluently, but that word needed no translator. It stabbed deeper than any accusation could have. He didn't answer right away. What could he say? Not about the orders. Not about the tribunal waiting. Not about the hours he spent convincing himself she didn't matter. So he looked her in the eye, voice low and steady. Because someone had to. No excuses. No mission briefings. No apologies. Her brow furrowed slightly, like the answer made less sense than silence. The sharp suspicion in her eyes didn't fade, but it cracked just slightly. Not gratitude, confusion, as if no part of her training or memory had prepared her for kindness without condition. And in that pause, something between them began. By morning, the silence broke. It started as whispers between market stalls, a joke on the subfeeds. Then someone went to see for themselves. The gate was empty, no body, no coils, no message. The stasis rig hung dead, wires sparking faintly. Some claimed they saw soldiers move it in the night. Others said it vanished like smoke. Within the hour, guards were recalled and interrogated. Surveillance logs scrubbed themselves clean, either by accident or intent. Colonel Reeven's voice flooded the grid in clipped, icy bursts. Lockdown. Authorization confirmed. All access points sealed. Foreign asset at large. Tactical red zone status active. Barricades rose. Patrols doubled. Drones changed routes. Ashra'tel, already tense, snapped taut. Someone had stolen the symbol, and that meant someone still believed she mattered. Back in the clinic's shadows, the AI recalculated again. Kaer'shii lay on the xenomed table, eyes closed, breathing deeper now. Her vitals pulsed with a rhythm the AI couldn't quantify. Alien organ regeneration, cellular adaptation, neural rewiring. Subject recovery, accelerated. Projected time to baseline function, 43 hours, Marek stared at the screen. 43 hours. No human could have survived that kind of trauma, much less healed from it. He didn't know if that was a miracle or a warning. Outside, the city shook with Reeven's orders. Loudspeakers crackled. If you see the Vharran fugitive, report. Immediately. Shelter in place is in effect. Do not approach. She is considered hostile and highly dangerous. Kaer'shii stirred slightly at the sound, her fingers twitching. He looked at her, then at the door. She was awake, and she was being hunted, and now so was he. She should have been comatose, but Kaer'shii was healing faster than the clinics. Systems could track. Cell regeneration rates 4 times above human norms. Neurological stabilizers, meant to dampen trauma, were rejected outright. Her immune system didn't just adapt to human medicine, it evolved through it, rewriting molecular instructions as it went. Dr. Vey watched with a frown, adjusting compound doses, recalibrating IV feeds, and muttering under her breath. I've never seen anything like this. She's accelerating. Marek said nothing. He couldn't stop staring. Kaer'shii lay still, but power radiated beneath her skin. Her breath was steady, her posture coiled, not fragile but waiting. She wasn't healing back into weakness. She was healing into something else, stronger, sharper. And the clinic, a forgotten hole in a city built on ashes, was the only place keeping that transformation from the eyes of the world. Marek knew it already. She wasn't just some prisoner, left to rot. She was important and dangerous, and he wasn't sure which one he feared more. Her voice came in fragments, alien consonants wrapped around vowels like music heard underwater. The clinic's voice assist tech strained to keep up, translating imperfectly through patched Vharran dialect packages. But Marek listened anyway, learning to read the cadence, the rhythm. He didn't need to understand every word to hear the meaning. She hadn't come with weapons. She'd come with a shard of a peace accord, encoded in her DNA in case of capture or interference. She was a living envoy, and the message had never been delivered, ambushed, silenced. Her mission buried in official reports as aggression neutralized. Marek's stomach turned. The datapads from his own briefing flashed in his memory. Enemy inciter, unstable royal, imminent threat. All lies, not just human lies. Kaer'shii said her own people believed she betrayed them, fled, to negotiate privately, abandoning the resistance. The truth had been gutted by both sides and reshaped into tools for war. They stared at each other across a chasm carved by mistrust and rewritten by propaganda. Neither side had wanted peace, and both had made sure no one ever found out she tried. It didn't take long for the full weight of it to settle on them both. She had no people now. The Vharran resistance considered her a ghost, a betrayer or worse, a symbol that failed. The humans labeled her a warlord to justify the executions, the city's lockdown, and her public display. She was a tool repurposed by two enemies, and Marek, he was now the one thing neither side had prepared for. A witness. He hadn't just broken protocol, he'd unearthed the truth, and that made him dangerous. Kaer'shii didn't ask for protection. She made it clear. She didn't trust him yet, but she stayed, spoke. Let the clinic patch her bones and refill her blood. They were bound not by trust but by isolation, by the knowledge that for a brief, shattering moment, they stood outside the machinery of war. Marek caught himself watching her sometimes when she wasn't looking, trying to understand how someone could carry so much pain and still look unbroken. He wasn't sure if she saw him the same way, but he knew this. They were both living on borrowed time, and truth wasn't going to protect them. Dr. Vey stood stiff near the medbed, arms crossed, face pale. "You know what this is," she said quietly. "This isn't triage anymore, it's sedition." Marek didn't flinch. He just looked at Kaer'shii, resting, half-lit in the scanner's glow. "She came here to stop a war. We made sure no one ever heard." Hervé's voice cracked. "Do you understand what happens if they find out she's alive? You didn't just break protocol, you shattered the narrative. People kill for less." He did understand that was the problem, because the alternative was silence, or worse, obedience, delivering her to a system that would erase her again or end her permanently. His loyalty had once been armor, but now it felt like a cage. He could follow orders, or he could follow the oath he once believed in. He wasn't a soldier anymore, he was a medic, and there was a patient breathing in that bed, caught between two dead empires still fighting to be heard. He'd save her, even if it destroyed everything else. The hum of the city changed. It was subtle at first. Drone frequency shifts, supply shipments halted, checkpoint rotations increased. But then came the announcements. Colonel Reeven's voice boomed from public nodes. "Sector-wide inspections are in effect. Cooperate with patrols. Failure to comply will be treated as resistance." The clinic's lights flickered. Cameras blinked red instead of green. Someone had flagged this block. Maybe an algorithm, maybe a neighbor, maybe one of the nurse techs. In the command center above, Reeven reviewed thermal maps. One quadrant glowed hotter than expected. Power surges, biometric anomalies. A ghost signal pulsed beneath the sector. "Seal it," he ordered. Barricades rose, surveillance drones rerouted to the clinic's air vents. Infantry boots hit the ground, clean, precise, and fast. The kind that came with full armor and shoot to disable. Protocols. Marek looked at the door, then at Kaer'shii, fully awake now. Calm in a way that unsettled him. She had known this was coming, and they were out of time. The clinic's back corridor opened into a spillway sealed for decades. Vey keyed the override, sweat running down her neck. "This leads into the old smugglers' tunnels. It's not mapped. If we vanish for real." Marek hesitated only long enough to grab a med pack. Then they went. Kaer'shii walked unaided now, every movement controlled, balanced. Her skin still bore bruises, but her presence felt charged. She stepped into the darkness like someone returning home. The tunnels were older than the war, older perhaps than either species realized. Alien glyphs pulsed dimly along the walls, reacting to Kaer'shii as she passed. The metal underfoot didn't creak. It sang. Something residual. Something ancient. Twisted human scaffolds had been bolted into place during the early occupation. Clumsy attempts to repurpose a system never built for them. Pipes hissed. Power veins throbbed softly. This place remembered everything. Above, the sweep tightened. Marek's earpiece caught Revan's voice. "They're in the undergrid, full lockdown, send in suppressors." He cut the feed. Kaer'shii stopped at a junction, placed her hand against a column. A pulse traveled down the corridor and a panel slid open. She didn't look back, she just said, "This city was ours once, and now, beneath its bones, they were ghosts moving through its memory." The corridor opened into silence. A vast chamber lay beyond, hidden deep in Ashra'tel's foundation, untouched by the war above. Its walls shimmered with crystalline lattice, each pane etched with geometric memories. Light pulsed within the crystal, not electric, not artificial, alive. Kaer'shii stepped forward slowly, reverently. She passed her hand across a glyph that bloomed with amber light, then lowered herself before an altar of fused bone and steel. There, embedded at its heart, was a shard, not a weapon, not quite a machine. It pulsed with slow, deliberate life. The shard of Takar, she lifted it. The light crawled across her skin like it remembered her. Within it lived more than data. Had carried her diplomatic mission, full records of her negotiations, neural imprints and cultural treaties, witnessed, encrypted, and sealed. If transmitted, it would tell the real story. Not what humans had reported, not what the Vharran had assumed. The truth, unfiltered, raw, a weapon made of memory. She turned to Marek, her voice low and certain. This was meant to end the war, and now it might ignite another. The shard flickered in Kaershii's palm, unstable, its glow dimming, a sputtering. Not dead, but wounded. Marek took a step closer. "What's wrong with it?" she frowned. "Its biolattice, fractured. It was damaged during capture. It can't connect to Vharran systems fully anymore." He reached for a diagnostic probe from his pack, powered it up and scanned the surface. The analysis confirmed it. Its energy core was alien, its interface architecture biological. But half its encoding had collapsed under structural trauma. The rest required synchronization with a Vharran cortex, a living one. Human tech couldn't power it. Alien tech couldn't stabilize it. Marek looked at her. "So what does that mean?" Kaer'shii didn't hesitate. "It means the truth can't be spoken unless both sides speak it together." The symbolism hit like gravity, a relic born of her species' highest ideals, now broken in a way only human knowledge could complete. It was poetic, terrifying, and impossible. "No one's going to authorize a fusion build," Vey muttered. "You realize what this represents? It's not just a tech problem, it's a political sin." Kaer'shii looked down at the shard pulsing in her hand. "I didn't come to survive," she said. "I came to be heard." The message came through a secured line. A surveillance node flagged a heat signature where there shouldn't have been. A field unit went dark soon after. Colonel Revan read the report twice. Marek Solas, unauthorized access, unauthorized contact, unauthorized disappearance. His hand closed around the datapad like it might shatter. "Lock it down," he said, and the city obeyed. Comm lines jammed. Public transit froze in place. Civilian terminals looped static. Surveillance drones rerouted, clustering around zones marked in yellow, then red. A wall unfolded in Sector 3. Doors refused to open without direct command chain input. Barricades sprouted from the asphalt like thorns. The city became a labyrinth of suspicion. No movement without clearance, no signals in or out. Revan stood in the command center's hollow glow, watching Ashra'tel shutter its eyes. "They took her," he said aloud. And the moment those words left his lips, he knew it. Wasn't just about retrieval, it was about the narrative, the display, the fear. Someone had shattered the symbol meant to control the city. Now he would remind them what fear really looked like. In the hidden chamber, time ran out like leaking light. The shard of Takar sat in a containment cradle cobbled together from an old surgical stabilizer, a neuro-sync bridge and a scavenged translator core. Vey's hands moved fast, fingers smudged with carbon and dried coolant. "Processor can't read the lattice," she muttered. "It's like trying to teach a piano to read blood." Marek rewired the human interface module, bypassing failsafes and throwing sparks. The human system rejected the alien input. Again, Kaer'shii stepped forward, placed one hand on the shard and the other on the console. "Let it feel me." "You're injured." "Let it feel me." The lights steadied. A hum deep and ancient vibrated through the floor. Code flowed across the surface in a hybrid language never meant to exist. Not Vharran, not human. Something between. Kaer'shii exhaled. "Truth doesn't need to be perfect," she said softly. "Only heard." Data streams linked. Power surged. The fusion held. For now. But outside sirens wailed. Ashra'tel did not fall quietly. The first explosion wasn't from the military. It came from the crowd. A chemical barrel tossed at a checkpoint barricade, followed by stones, then makeshift pulse charges. The second came from the soldiers, and the third from somewhere no one could trace. Within minutes, order ruptured. Vharran civilians, long silent, surged through alleys painted in centuries of grief. Human protesters joined them, those who remembered the woman's body strung above the gates and now wondered what else had been buried. Drones blinked red, issuing dispersal warnings. Then they fired, low-grade crowd suppressors meant to scatter, not kill. But something had changed. This time the crowd didn't scatter. Digital billboards flickered between state propaganda and hacked feeds, the shard's activation beginning to ripple, transmitting echoes through still unstable channels. Fragments of Kaershii's voice pulsed through the static, words not in any official record, names, pleas, a broken kind of grace. Some screamed for justice, some for silence. But beneath it, all Ashra'tel could feel it. Something old, older than the war, was breaking, not just the city's bones, but its story. The crowd parted in waves of chaos as Marek, Vey, and Kaer'shii pushed toward the tower. Smoke drifted from ruptured vents. Sirens wailed. Protest chants dissolved into panic. Somewhere above, a drone pinged, followed by a silent pulse only soldiers could hear. Kaer'shii stumbled. Marek caught her. She nodded once, and they moved again. Then came the light. A single beam, cold, straight, precise, lanced from a rooftop, and tore through her side. She cried out, staggered, fell to one knee. Marek knelt beside her, blood hot against his hands. Vey shouted something, already prepping a med shot, but Kaer'shii pushed it away. "No." Her voice was hoarse. "My voice dies here, or it changes everything." He tried to lift her again. She forced herself to her feet. The crowd around them surged forward in defiance, shielding them for a heartbeat. They slipped through the breach. Behind them the sniper chambered again, but didn't fire. Maybe it was doubt, or mercy, or hesitation. It didn't matter. Kaer'shii didn't stop. Again, the lift was dead MP damage. Rewired lockdown, maybe sabotage. Marek didn't waste time figuring it out. He threw Kaer'shii over his shoulder. Her breathing came sharp, uneven, but she said nothing. No protest, no plea, just trust. The tower's stairwell loomed, spiraling. Metal half collapsed in places, lit only by failing emergency strips. Each step rang with urgency, each landing a battlefield of fatigue and gravity. Below, the pounding of boots echoed upward. Vey stayed behind at the ground level, stalling the soldiers with misdirection and every ounce of authority she had left. Above, only the storm. Wind clawed through shattered windows. Alarms pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Marek climbed, step by step, one breath at a time. His muscles screamed, his vision narrowed, but he didn't stop. Kaer'shii gripped his shoulder, once, faint but grounding. She wasn't unconscious, she was holding on. The broadcast chamber was ancient, buried beneath glass and ash. Its walls were once ceremonial, a place for truth-speaking during peace councils. Now it was a tomb with blinking lights. Marek set Kaer'shii down on the center pad. Her blood pooled against the cracked tile. He moved quickly, powering up the hybrid interface, stabilizing the shard, bypassing corrupted input ports with wires stripped from his own comms gear. Kaer'shii coughed, her voice raw. "It's ready?" He nodded. She touched the shard. It responded instantly, flickering to life in sync with her breath. A hollow projection burst outward, unstable, flickering, but live. No encryption, no filter, no edit. She began to speak, not in anger, not in blame. She spoke of her mission, of her people, of the promise that had been made before the first shot was fired. She spoke of betrayal by both sides, of truth lost to convenience. She spoke of fear, of hope, of memory. And then she said, "We were never your enemy, only your mirror." The words echoed through the chamber, through relays now hijacked by the shard, and into every feed, every screen, every ship above. The world didn't stop. But it listened. The doors didn't creak. They exploded inward. Steel splintered as Colonel Reeven's squad poured in. Black armor, rifles raised, visors glowing with targeting data. Too late. Marek stood at the transmitter's core, hands locked, around the stabilization lever. The room pulsed with low-frequency hums as the shard projected Kaershii's final words across space. Reeven's boots crunched across shattered debris. "Step away." Marek didn't move. "She's not your asset," he said. "She's the truth. You can kill me, but you can't stop what's already begun." Kaer'shii was still breathing, barely. Her fingers rested on the shard, light dancing across her blood-stained skin. Reeven hesitated, not because he doubted the order, but because he understood the cost. And somewhere, beneath the orders, beneath the uniform, he wasn't sure it had been worth it. The signal ignited. Carried by the shard's pulse, it leapt from the ancient chamber to every relay node in orbit, bypassing encryption, shattering filters. A raw, unedited transmission wrapped in alien coding and human compression algorithms. Across Ashra'tel, comm units sparked to life. In warships above, monitors glitched, then displayed Kaershii's face. Bruised, bleeding, unwavering, combat. Feeds froze mid-firefight. Command rooms went silent. On the Vharran homeworld, old elders stood still as the daughter they thought disgraced spoke again. On Earth, political briefings halted mid-sentence. Soldiers on both sides, rifles raised in opposite directions, paused as her voice reached them. Not a scream, not a call to arms, but a truth spoken with grief. She spoke of treaties unhonored, of negotiations silenced, of a war neither species truly chose, but both perpetuated. And as the final words echoed, "We were never your enemy, only your mirror." Something cracked, not structures, not governments, but certainty. For the first time in a generation, the war had no footing, not because peace had been signed, but because doubt had been planted. In a world built on lies, truth had finally been heard, and it wouldn't go quiet again. Ashra'tel smoldered behind them as the Vharran rescue scouts descended, sleek, cloaked skimmers gliding low across ruined rooftops. They moved with quiet urgency, bypassing human checkpoints still locked in confusion and political paralysis. Inside the broadcast tower, Kaer'shii lay still. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse fading, but she was alive. They wrapped her in ceremonial layers, woven cloth laced with living medthread, glowing faintly as it responded to her failing vitals. Not armor, not tribute. Preservation. Marek watched as they lifted her with reverence, not restraint. They didn't speak to him, didn't need to. Their eyes said enough. They recognized what she was now, not just a lost heir, but a voice returned. She was no longer property, no longer propaganda. She was Vharran again. And as the ship lifted into the ash-thick sky, Marek felt the weight of what they'd both survived, and what it might still cost him. Chains didn't bind him, optics did. Dozens of eyes watched from the upper chamber gallery as Marek Solas stood alone before the tribunal. A court draped in symbols of unity that now looked too clean to be honest. The charges were read aloud with mechanical precision: dereliction of duty, treason, unauthorized, collaboration with a known enemy, unlawful broadcast of foreign intelligence, endangerment of regional security. Each syllable struck like a hammer, but the silence after was louder. Marek didn't speak in his defense. Not yet. His gaze drifted to the gallery. Some faces were hard, military, loyal to the chain of command. Others were something else: civilians, students, even veterans who'd once seen what war cost up close. Their eyes didn't condemn. They waited, not for denial, for understanding. The trial wasn't just about law. It was about memory, and the question no one dared voice aloud: what if he was right? It started with candles, then signs, then voices. Outside, the tribunal walls, thousands gathered. Human civilians, Vharran exiles, old soldiers, new thinkers. Even those who once believed in the war's necessity. Now they stood together, shoulder to shoulder beneath a storm of drones and government silence. The signs said, "She spoke, we heard." Truth isn't treason. You call it betrayal. We call it humanity. They didn't chant a title or a slogan. They chanted a name not because he was a hero, but because when others obeyed, Marek chose something else: compassion, doubt, action. The media tried to spin it, officials tried to downplay it, but the signal had already seeded something deeper, and no amount of authority could erase the image of a human carrying an alien through fire to tell a story no one wanted heard. The protests weren't riots, they were a reckoning. A single communique lists new orders: reassignment to Deep Watch Relay 7, an outpost orbiting nothing of value. No ceremony, no farewell, no record beyond a footnote. Revan's shuttle departs under low-light protocol, escorted by drones that do not salute. The command center replaces his name on the roster before the engines cool. In corridors where his voice once thundered, officers speak of rotations and requisitions, not disgrace. It is exile without acknowledgement, punishment without confession. The war machine keeps turning -1 cog and calls the silence equilibrium. Media feeds capture Dr. Vey standing before a joint forum of human governors and Vharran elders, a modest lectern between histories that still bleed. She does not invoke treaties or offer guarantees. She describes arteries and scar tissue, how bodies knit after trauma if sutures hold. Healing begins at the edge of what we fear most. Her proposal is unassuming: shared medical corridors, bilingual research, crews, exchange residencies aboard neutral vessels. Reporters search for grand promises. She gives incremental milestones, measured outcomes, tangible graphs. Critics label it naive. Survivors of the riots call it necessary. When the session ends, delegations leave with more questions than answers, and the first unanimous vote for continued talks. Night cycles drift across the detention habitat, painting bars of starlight on Marek's cell. He drafts a message on the slate: "I didn't save you because you were right. I saved you because no one else would. And maybe that's enough." Lines appear, disappear, reappear as he revises, searching for words untainted by duty or guilt. He recalls the weight of her heartbeat against his shoulder on the staircase, the tremor in her voice before the broadcast, the silence afterward. The cursor blinks. He selects delete, watches the text fade, but the cadence remains in his mind. An echo neither tribunal walls nor locked doors can silence. She stands tall beneath the dual flags, Vharran crest behind her, the fractured symbol of the coalition. Beside it, ceremonial silk drapes her frame, stitched with thread woven from bone and memory. Traditional to her people, defiant to those who buried her alive, the cameras hover in silence. Billions are watching. Kaer'shii does not bow, she does not thank. She speaks. Her voice is steady, low, carried by gravity, not pride. "I am not a symbol." She looks into the lens, not above it, not beyond it. "I am a survivor." Then softer, like all of you. She names no enemies, she offers no apologies. What she gives is something older, heavier. A map of where the lies began and a compass pointing beyond them. When the signal ends, no one speaks. Because in a galaxy aching for absolutes, she has offered something more terrifying. Truth without. Demand Ashra'tel stands quiet for the first time in decades. At the eastern gate, where once a body hung in silence, scaffolding now braces the frame for disassembly. Human welders in matte armor torch through support bolts. Vharran artisans, faces painted in ceremonial ash, chant as they remove the coil pylons one by one. It is not a celebration. No cheering crowds, no anthems, no victory. Just the sound of metal surrendering to history, stone by stone. They take it apart. The message that once screamed power now whispers regret. Children watch from rooftops. Elders bow their heads. No one replaces the structure. There is no need. What was built in cruelty is now being undone, not by decree, but by decision. The final beam hits the ground with a thud that feels more like an exhale than a collapse. And, for the first time, the gates of Ashra'tel are truly open. On a cold moon orbiting nothing of consequence, Marek watches the ceremony through a cracked hollow screen. The signal flickers. The audio cuts in and out, but the image is clear enough. Steel falling under flame, silence rising in its place. No medals, no mentions, just him and the memory. He sips something bitter from a tin cup, leans back in a chair that creaks like old guilt. The feed ends. The silence returns. He doesn't turn it off. He just watches the reflection of the extinguished gate in the glass and wonders if some things stay broken by choice. The knock is soft, barely audible over the wind that howls between forgotten mining, rigs and scorched rock. He opens the door. She's there, draped in ceremonial Vharran silk, the same style worn during remembrance rites. But on her feet are worn human combat boots, still dusted with moon soil. She says nothing, just steps past him like it's the most natural thing in the world, as if she never left, as if this, now, isn't the epilogue, but the prologue. He doesn't stop her, because part of him knew she would find him, and all of him hoped she would. She doesn't speak at first, just lowers herself into the chair beside him, the dust of two worlds in her steps. The screen still glows faintly, replaying images of torches cutting down old iron. He doesn't look at her, but he doesn't move away. They watch together in silence, the kind that feels earned. Then softly, her voice breaks the stillness. They say peace needs symbols. She pauses. The firelight flickers across her face. I say peace needs people. He doesn't reply because he doesn't need to. The feed shifts. A new vessel glides across the screen, sleek, silver, lined with dual insignias. An announcer's voice explains, the first human Vharran medical starship. Equal crew, equal mission. It will not carry weapons. Only hope. Its name flashes in 12 languages. Unity Class Arc 1. A beginning not born from conquest, but care. She turns to him. No ceremony now, just familiarity. Smiling like it's a shared secret. I need a doctor. He stares for a moment, then nods. Not because he's ready, but because the story isn't over. Outside, the twin moons rise. Somewhere in their glow, something waits to be healed.